everybody, "Get Mark Breslin," they said. "He'll say something nice." I do want to thank Mark very much. He is the reason I and many other people are in the comedy business in Canada, and he deserves a big round of applause for all that he's done. I think it's very much, you know already, some of the people that have come out of Yuck Yucks. Jim Carrey, my best friend Norm Macdonald came out of there, Howie Mandel, and I don't mean to sound like a name dropper, but you know who's a real name dropper is Spielberg. I want to thank my brother Chuck. Give him a big round of applause, please. The Shuffle every year, the festival, really one of the most popular guys in Port Credit. As a matter of fact, raise your hand if you've ever been married to Chuck. I went to Arundel High School. I don't know if they mentioned that. I went to Arundel. I didn't go a lot, but I did go there, and I was on the football team, and we never won a game. We never won. I'm not even kidding. We never won a game. The closest we came, we lost a game to TLK 1-0. It was a football. How do you even do that? How can you even? At some point, we must have said, "Look, take a point and we'll all go home." I had a coach at Arundel, honestly, this is for real, Coach Ken McKay. Ken McKay was the football coach, but also the guidance counselor. And I was getting in trouble all the time for disrupting the class. Honing my skills probably is what it was. And every time I would go in there, he would open the book and he would write, "Pat is going to turn over a new leaf." And by the end of the year, 10 times it said, "Pat is going to turn over a new leaf." And Ken sat me down one time. He said, "You know, you should get into comedy." That's why I was getting in trouble all the time. I was disrupting the class and being funny. And Ken said, you got to get into comedy. And then about 10 years later, I was playing in Vegas. I was at Bally's Hotel, and Frank Sinatra was on one side of the marquee, and my name was on the other side of the marquee. And I was backstage, and Ken McKay came walking back. And he said, "Holy shit, I'm a good guidance counselor." I love Mississauga. My family loved Mississauga. My father particularly loved Mississauga. He loved everything about it. He would stop and talk to people and get to know everyone. And he would go to the parks, and he would have picnics by himself sometimes with my mother. The better ones were by himself. He loved it so much. He was one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life, my father. I walked into the den one day, he was asleep on the couch, and there was a Post-it on the TV that said, "I'm watching this." He loved the parks, and he loved Mississauga, and he loved it so much that we actually scattered his ashes in Arundel Park. Unless that's illegal, in which case we did not. I guess there's all kinds of papers up here. When I first started women's golf, I grew up obviously in Mississauga, and I worked at Square One, at Aggie's Shoes. I was the highest paid part-time employee in the company because, man, could I sell ugly shoes. The uglier the shoe, the more commission you made. I was making a fortune. All these poor women clopping around in platforms. I worked for Bell Canada on Mavis Road. I worked for Bell Canada. I was there for a long time before I met Mark and got into comedy. But I was there. I would climb those poles in January. My hands would not move. My fingers would not function. My eyelashes were frozen shut. I was like, Jesus, there's got to be a warmer way to make a living. So I ended up in LA. And things went well. I had many shows there. It was hard for my mother. My parents were so supportive when I got into this business. They didn't try to stop me. They were supportive. They were thrilled for me. And every once in a while, I would have a show get canceled. My mother couldn't believe it. Patty, how could the show be canceled? The woman down the hall watches every day. I said, I don't know, Ma. I'll talk to ABC. My mother was funny, too. She was a character. She worked on the Lake Shore. She worked at Admiral Television. She was there for at least, I think, 20 years, building fridges. That's what she did. I wouldn't buy one of those fridges, but she was building them. She put all the broken handles on. She was funny, too. I was in Florida with my son, and I called her just to see how she was doing. And she answered the phone, and I said, Ma, it's me. She said, hang on, Patty. The living room's on fire. I said, what? I'll call you back. The living room is on fire. Click. She had set the living room on fire. She set the coffee table on fire. She had these candles, which were so frickin' dangerous, and she had like 10 of them on the table, set the table on fire. Good thing my Aunt June lived in the same building, came down and saved her life. Otherwise, we would have been spreading her ashes much earlier than... I love Mississauga, and I come back here whenever I can, and it's not enough. I used to come all the time, obviously, at Christmas for my parents to see them, and that's not there anymore, but all the memories are, and the good times I've had in Mississauga, and there have been so many, and I like coming back, and I like meeting other people who are from Mississauga, which I do quite often. I want to take this time to thank my wife, Amy. I want to thank Amy. I want to thank my children, Sam, Jacob, and the other two. Amy knows all their names. I do want to thank them. They've done nothing for Mississauga, don't get me wrong. They haven't done a they ratted us out when we spread the ashes. It is an honor to be on Legends Row, and it's an honor to be part of the Walk of Fame. I can't tell you how excited I am by that. I can't tell you how honored I am by that. And I hope to make a lot more trips back home to Mississauga. So thank you very, very much for this honor.